Hi guys, what you are looking at right now is one of the most exciting lenses to ever come out for the APS-C system, in my not so humble opinion. This is the Viltrox 75mm f1.2. You are looking at it right now. Look at that background separation, the bokeh, beautiful bokeh back there. I just love this lens when it comes to portraiture. So if you have picked up fancy new a6700, maybe you have the a6400 if you're in the Sony system, the ZV-E10, the FX30 that I'm shooting on right now. This lens will make your APS-C cameras absolutely shine, and let's talk about it. Now, I hope my enthusiasm for this lens came through in that intro, because I am extremely enthusiastic. I'm very jazzed about Viltrox lately. Don't sleep on Viltrox. If you are sleeping on Viltrox, do it no longer, because they are right up there with Tamron and Sigma as a premium third-party lens manufacturer when it comes to the Sony E-Mount and, of course, the Fuji X-Mount. But this one here is an E-Mount. They actually call this their Pro lens, and I could absolutely believe it. 75mm 1.2. So in full frame terms of field of view and depth of field, you're looking at what's about 112.5 millimeters with a 1.8 in terms of the blurriness if you were standing in the same spot with a full frame camera. And that is just something that looks so great on these APS-C cameras. I can't believe how good the images look coming out of this thing. The Sigma 56mm 1.4 was my favorite portrait lens for the Sony E-Mount system, and it is still a magnificent lens, and you can always count on that lens if you want that 85mm type of field of view in terms of full frame equivalence. That Sigma 56 is just a banger. It wins every time at that focal length. It is so fantastic. But this thing here, it just has that little extra, just that extra focal length, that extra bit of light. It just creates a unique photo that I absolutely adore on the APS-C, and also the full frame. Look at this. This here is the Sony a7R5 that Sony was kind enough to lend me, and I have been using the Viltrox 1.2 here, the 75mm, on this full frame A7R5 because I use it in APS-C crop mode, and I still get 26 megapixels on this camera. And the truth is, the full frame I have that's a portrait lens is an 85mm, the old 85mm 1.8 on the Sony, and I actually like the look I'm getting out of this more for portraits on this camera than the full frame 85mm 1.8. But let's talk about the build quality of this guy for a second. Much like the 13mm 1.4, that was the first Viltrox lens that really blew me away. This is just such a wonderful lens for the APS-C system. 13mm 1.4 lets in so much light. You can do vlogging. You can also do studio talking head things. Just a fantastic lens. I've reviewed it. I'll link that up over my left shoulder. But yes, another metal lens. It has a plastic lens hood, but it's nice and sturdy plastic lens hood, but the lens itself is metal with an extremely smooth focus ring. It also has an aperture ring that can be clicked and declicked. That is my favorite thing. I mentioned that in my videos to Viltrox. I would like the aperture ring to be clicky and not clicky. Now, I'm not saying that it was me that made that happen, but I'm pretty sure it was me. And it has an autofocus to manual focus switch, a focus hole button. It has a 77mm filter thread. There is also a red rubber gasket for weather sealing and a USB-C port for easy updates on your old computational device. It weighs 675 grams and has a minimum focus distance of 88 centimeters. So you're not doing any macro work with this guy. 88 centimeters is quite a distance, so you can't be very close to your subject. But with a 75mm on an APS-C, you're probably not going to be super close to your subject. The optical quality of this lens is amazing. You get sharp photos even at 1.2. The center is very sharp, and you're going to want to shoot this wide open at 1.2. I mean, you got it there. You might as well use it and get that super blurry background, and the corners are not quite as sharp. It's not corner to corner sharpness at 1.2, but it's still pretty sharp corner to corner. But if you want ultimate sharpness for the full frame, you have to stop it down a little bit to about 2.8, but personally I think it looks wonderful at 1.2, and the corners are slightly softer than the center. No big deal. You're not going to see any pin cushioning or any barrel distortion, and the chromatic aberration is virtually not there. I couldn't find any chromatic aberration in any of my photos. The LOCA, the longitudinal chromatic aberration, that is controlled extremely well. This lens is just such a great, like the 13mm 1.4 is such a great optical performer. There's great color rendition out of the lens. The colors just pop. There is nice contrast. Its flare control is okay. It's not the best at controlling flare, so if you're going to shine really bright lights into the lens itself, you may get some flaring. It is about an average performer when it comes to that. If you're using your lens hood, this shouldn't be much of an issue at all. So we're now at about $550. Check the link for exact pricing, but at about $550 US, this thing is a steal of a lens. But of course there are some drawbacks, especially when a lens is priced at $550 and provides this type of optical quality, but these are limitations that I can certainly live with. Now, one of them is in terms of the autofocus speed and noise. Now, you will hear a little bit of noise if your ear is up to the lens when it is doing long focusing, but that is not really an issue for me. I always use external mics, and I wouldn't really consider this a video lens anyway, and in photos I find the autofocus is quite snappy. It might not be quite as snappy as, say, a G Master lens, but it definitely focuses very, very quickly. Not a perfect focusing system like something on one of the more expensive lenses, but definitely an excellent focusing lens. In video, you may see a minor hesitation when it comes to quick focusing transitions. Speaking of focusing transitions, this does exhibit focus breathing. So if you are trying to stack your photos in Photoshop and blend them together, you are going to have to be aware of that. Or if you're shooting video and you're doing long focus pulls, once again, be aware that there is focus breathing. But as you saw in the intro, you're not going to see that focus breathing unless you're really doing some long focus pulls. And the last drawback, I think, is just the size and weight. When you compare it to some APS-C lenses, this is going to dwarf them. It is 675 grams and by no means a small, lightweight lens. However, to me, it is worth it to get that great optical quality for my portraits. But that is it for the potential drawbacks, and I certainly can live with them for $550-ish. I think this is a ridiculously great lens. I can't stop gushing about it. I use it all the time. I can't stop taking pictures with this lens. I'm excited about Viltrox and what they're doing, and the fact that they are now a premium lens company as well. It is just so great to see that type of thing, and that's why I love it when camera systems open up their mount and they let other people get involved. It gives people like us a lot more options, and I do appreciate that. So let's send it out to Marky over there in Handsome Alley to show you a little more footage from the Viltrox 75mm as we close it out. So a big thanks to Viltrox for sending out this very exciting lens for review. It will definitely be my go-to portrait lens in most situations going forward. To be able to get f1.2 at this focal length, oh boy, exciting time. I love it when companies come out with great things. Viltrox, you did a good job. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.